Chairman Kinski, you're live on YouTube.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the meeting to order. This is Senate Appropriations Committee meeting, Thursday, January 26, 2023, noon. The first matter for our consideration after we call the roll will be Senate File 146, CapCon, then Senate File 166, 169, and 90. Linda, please call the roll.
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar.
Yep.
And Chairman Kinski.
Here. On Senate File 146 committee, the first item for our consideration is an amendment that Catherine has drafted. And Catherine, welcome. If you would walk us through the amendment, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. So this is an amendment related to capital construction projects. And before we get into it, I'll just
Hold that mic just a little bit closer.
Before we get into it, I'll just do a quick.
I'll just tell you, Catherine, there's three kinds of people in the Wyoming Senate. Those who have no hearing issues, those who have hearing issues and know it and wear hearing aids, and those who have hearing issues and don't know it or won't wear hearing aids.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, before we really get into this amendment, I'd just like to do a quick reference guide for you.
Okay.
So lines 2 and 10 are related to the AMK Ranch. Lines.
Okay, let me, 2 and 10 of the amendment.
Yes, lines 2 and 10 of the amendment are related to the AMK Ranch.
AMK, okay.
Lines 4 through 8 are for UW, the 70 million inflation reserve.
4 through
8.
8, okay.
And 12 through 20 are for the coal mining community building.
This is the bank building remodel?
Yes.
The bank building
yes.
remodel?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that would be correct.
Bank in a coal mining community, okay.
So starting on the amendment on page 10 of the CapCon bill, line 6, we would insert a new footnote that would restore the old language of a condition of this appropriation requiring further legislative action before expending funds on the projects. And that would be for the 70 million inflation reserve.
Okay, let's go to specified in subsection B of this section, and that on page 10, line 19.
Right, correct, Mr. Chairman.
Is that the footnote we had before?
So in the old draft, we had an extra footnote, Mr. Chairman, that was 1C. It was the footnote that we had before. That was removed during JAC in January.
Okay, this says any unexpended, after they finish the North Tower, any unexpended unobligated funds may be expended for the West Stands or the Wyoming War Memorial. We're adding a C. It says, as a condition of this appropriation, further legislative action shall be required before spending funds on a project specified in subsection B, which is incorrect because we're allowing them to spend on the Wyoming Student Housing Project. Am I reading that wrong? Pardon? Yeah. Yeah, this is going to have to be reworked a little bit. Okay. Shall be required before expending funds on any construction project other than the UW Student Housing Project?
The difference between, Mr. Chairman, the difference between this language and the old language that we had, the only difference is that this, the old language to the T was no, as a condition of this appropriation, further legislative action shall be required before expending funds on a project specified in subsection B. And I believe that that was a requirement that JC wanted for the 70 million to go through, otherwise not.
We did at one point. But the point is that the amendment's not getting, we don't intend to stop them from finishing the dorms with the $70 million. As a condition of this appropriation, go ahead.
So for those following, and for clarity for staff, when we look at, on page 10, lines 19 through 24, I think we are reading it wrong, Senator Chairman Kensky.
Okay.
It says, upon the completion and signing of a construction contract for the University of Wyoming Student Housing Project, including the north and south resident halls. So upon the completion, so the $70 million, this footnote is intended to say $70 million is intended to go to that but upon the completion of those projects, if after the completion of that project, any unexpended funds are available, then they can go to the West Stands or the War Memorial Stadium. Is that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, that would be correct.
That's what it says, and that's what we don't want.
No, that is what we want. Well, correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, but our concerns with the amendment as proposed in front of us by staff is good.
As a condition of this appropriation, further legislative action shall be required before expending any funds on a project specified in subsection B of this section, and it's the UW housing project specified.
The reason why it's okay is because of that initial language on 19.
Completion
that
and
says,
signing.
upon the completion and signing.
Okay, gotcha. All right, please, I stand corrected, Catherine, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next item would be on line 10. We would be reinstating the footnote number 2 from the old bill, except we're amending it just slightly. So we would amend for the AMK Ranch, no state funds shall be expended on this project. And the idea behind it was that potentially UW could raise donations, but no state funds, so that includes major maintenance, would be expended. The old language states, no state funds are appropriated or shall be expended on this project.
Senator Grew, you had a concern about that language, didn't you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did. It was raised by the folks at UW because while the intent, at least I thought the intent of the body at the time was to say no construction appropriations, they were concerned. There was a concern raised from folks at UW. They do programs there. They do programs now. They will do programs whether there's any construction or not. And what they didn't want to do was they didn't want to feel like they were running afoul of this committee if they spent dollars on programs. So I don't know if this new language gets there for us or not.
Mr. Chairman, Senator
Please.
Drew, this language is intended to address that concern.
Okay.
So this is going to go on page 10. It'll be a new number 2, right after B.
Mr. Chairman, that is
Or
correct.
excuse me, right after C. No state funds shall be expended on this project. And that's the footnote relates to AMK Ranch. So this, are you satisfied, Mike, that this project is limited to renovation of the AMK Ranch?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, excuse me.
thank you, Catherine.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
You're batting 100%. No pressure.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to put a 2 in on line 6 with the AMK Ranch, or, it doesn't have a reference. It just says no state funds shall be used.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, on line 2 of the amendment, it does add a footnote
Oh, yeah,
to.
okay.
Thank you.
So the next item would be on page 13. It's line 12 of the amendment. And this essentially deletes the entirety of section 7B, the appropriated $3 million from the general fund to the Wyoming Business Council for purposes of providing a grant for the rehabilitation of a historic building and a historic coal mining community for purposes of downtown revitalization and multi-purpose community activity center. Please say that 3 times fast.
Page 14,
Page 13.
page 13, 19 through 23. And then 14, 1 through 23. Well, but except on line 20, there begins something that we.
Whole page, 1 through 23.
It does, but it goes too far.
Oh,
Does. Mr. Chairman, I think page 14 deals with the grant program and the requirements for it. It's all related to the historic coal community, the banks and the historic coal community.
So, but read page 14, starting at line 20.
Oh. Oh, good call. Hey, thank you. Pretty important.
Just watching out for you, Senator.
Yeah, that's good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that will be a staff correction.
yeah, there it is.
Hmm?
Save the rodeo, Chairman.
Well, I thought that you wanted that in there. I
I
thought
do.
that was a split.
Yes.
I disagree with it, but it's a split. Okay, so it should be page 14, lines 1 through 19, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then page 16, there would not be a deletion.
And then there wouldn't be one on 15 either.
Correct. So line 16 gets struck in its entirety. I'm on the amendment.
I don't have that amendment.
Well,
Do you have a line 16?
Right here, line 16.
Don't have that. Oh, of the amendment.
Yeah, of the amendment. Line 16 says page 15, lines 1
Yeah.
through 20, delete entirely. That would be struck.
Right.
eliminate it.
Then line 14 would say page 14, lines 1 through 19.
I was going to page 15.
And then line 16, we would delete.
Yeah. So I believe out of the amendment, the only change is on line 14, correcting it to say page 14, lines 1 through 19, and strike all of line 16. That must have been I must not have clearly communicated with staff. I see a ruffling. So for the public, what we're doing is we're going through the capital construction, and there were some things in that bill that the Senate strongly wanted in there that we got outvoted by our House colleagues, and so it is our habit when we start to set it aright according to the vote that we had. And what we've done is on the UW housing, the $70 million says use the $70 million for the construction project, but don't start any other projects like the pool or the stands. And then with the AMK Ranch, the representation originally was that no state funds would be used on construction on the AMK Ranch. That was struck out, and we're reinserting that understanding. And then there was a specific project called out in the bill to, what was it, $5 million to restore a bank in a downtown community that's a coal mining community that has a population of over 10,000 people. And we had lost on that one, so we're looking at striking that out. And saving pages in the bill as a consequence. Just discussion committee? Discussion? Mike? Senator Grew?
Mr. Chairman, so then we have the rest of the other change that we want to make about deleting that line 16 and also changing line 14 to lines 1 through either 18 or 19. I don't know which one. Doesn't matter.
But we haven't moved the amendment
Yeah.
yet, so.
Okay. No, we haven't even moved the bill.
We haven't moved the bill. And we haven't, so the amendment will be the one with the corrections.
Okay.
We'll just make sure we have the corrections.
Just let me.
To the committee? Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I move the bill.
second, discussion, and we took comment this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Discussion, all right, amendment? I'll move this amendment as modified, which is on page 14. It now reads, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, you did not take public comment on this bill this morning. It was just.
Oh, we
an
did not.
explanation. Correct.
Okay, well, we took comment. It seemed like we took a lot of comment. Okay, my apologies. Okay, agency comment. Agency comment. All right, public comment. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is Erin Taylor, and I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. You heard from the Wyoming Community College Commission today, and I think they provided some clarifying information. My role today with WACD is really just to kind of, for the benefit of the members of the new committee, to inform you that WACD, representing all of the community colleges, supports all of the projects as they come forward every single year. And I'll tell you, in my tenure representing the community colleges, this process has improved and changed immensely. It kind of used to be every project for himself before the legislative process and however it worked out. And now that process has really, really refined. So it starts in the Community College Commission, working with the colleges themselves, going through a very detailed 13-point evaluation process. Then, of course, working with the State Building Commission and coordinating very closely with the colleges who are working on these projects. So it's an annual process, something that takes place every year. The prioritization moves, the projects move their way through that process, and then they come to you, the legislature, in that space. So I just wanted to express our support. You heard the details of the projects earlier, and provide a little bit of a history of how that process works for the members of the new committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Anything for Erin? All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Further comment? Further comment from the public? All right, I'll close public comment. We're back on the bill. It's been moved and seconded. The amendment, was the amendment moved?
I think you moved it.
I think I moved the amendment.
I seconded it.
Okay, and the amendment is now to
Can you
correction,
repeat what the
the
amendment-
document in front of us. The amendment now on, please.
Senator Kinski moved the amendment as amended. Do you have that
Could you
language?
provide the amendment one more time?
Yeah, and let me recite it. On page 14, lines where it says, it's line 14, where it says page 14, lines 1 through 23 should read lines 1 through 19. And line 16 of the amendment should be struck in its entirety.
Thank you.
Discussion on the amendment. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, back on the bill to the committee. Senator Groom.
Thanks. I want to make a comment. Actually, it was on the amendment, but it's also on the bill, so it works. So I'll throw it in here. I just want to explain AMK, that it was only proposed that private funds be used in this first phase of AMK Ranch, which is a ranch that's up in my neck of the woods. And I was the one that suggested that we put in language to keep it at private funds and not public. And the only reason was because folks up in my area always are asking, what can we do to get more involved with UW? And folks at UW are saying, how can we get more involved with that, an area that's quite a ways away from the school? And I think I'd like to try to push this forward as the way. And our town, our area is has a great gift of being philanthropically minded. And so I'm trying to encourage them to be philanthropically minded towards the university, and this would be a great place to do it. So that's the why. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further comment from the committee? I do want to throw a shout out to the University of Wyoming and to my fellow grads from the University of Wyoming. The reason that we are trying to slow down the rate of construction is not anything against UW, but the dorms is a $250 million project that can't be finished. The $250 million has been expended. Need another $70 million to finish it. And it's just saying, let's finish that one first before we start on the West Stands, finish the law school before we start on the pool. And I think it's the sentiment that any average citizen would probably share. Let's finish what we've got before we start something new. In the long run, I'm confident that the West Stands will be remodeled. I'm confident that the corporate pool will be built. We just want to have a little bit more time, a little more breathing space for the university, give them a chance to complete what they've got. Anything else for the committee? Call the roll.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Carew.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar.
No.
And Chairman Kinski.
Aye. CapCon, I think Mike has CapCon. Senator Gierayu. Did I get it? Okay. It only took a couple hundred times. Okay, thank you. The next bill for our I don't see Senator Hicks. Oh, there he is. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 166, Border Wall and Sanctuary City Transport. Senator Hicks, the primary sponsor, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, will just get right into the bill. What the bill does is provides an appropriation for 3 states for border wall and transport of illegal aliens. But before we get in there, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'd just like to read through the rationale. It is the southern border of the United States. Last I checked, there was 50 of us, and when the federal government fails to comply with their basic mandates of protecting the citizens of the United States, then it's incumbent upon the states to act. And so, Mr. Chairman, in the last year, the federal government fiscal year runs from October 1st to October 1st. In the last year, we had almost 2.4 million interceptions at the southern border that were allowed into this country. If we look in the last 2 years, that number is approximately 5 million. Keep that number in mind because, Mr. Chairman, when we look at the appropriations, what the appropriations represents $1 for every apprehension that we've allowed into the country. It does not include the estimated 1.5 million gotaways that we never apprehended at the border in the last 2 years. So in the last 4 months, we've had 800,000 individuals that were intercepted by Border Patrol that were allowed into the country. 4 months, record high. In the month of December, we had 250,000, an all-time high for any month. The numbers are going up, not down, Mr. Chairman. And again, that doesn't include the estimated 1+ million gotaways that were never encountered and checked by Border Patrol. So, Mr. Chairman, as we just go down through there, when we look at some of the issues that we're trying to grapple with, I would direct you to page 3. Part of the intercepted individuals that were captured by either Border Patrol. So the bill will use 2 names in here, and I just want to clarify here. The Office of Field Operations is the U.S. Border Control, but they actually operate at the points of entry. So you'll see that name in here, Office of Field Operation, and use the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol patrols those areas between those point of entries. For all practical purposes, they're the same, but the data that the federal government keeps, they track them different. If it's a point of entry or if it's out in the middle of nowhere, that's Border Patrol. But Mr. Chairman, if we go to the top of page 3, we've had a total of 165 terrorists on the United States terrorist watch list in 1 year that were apprehended at our southern border. Mr. Chairman, we've had over 30,000 convicted felons intercepted at our southern border. We have no idea how many that weren't intercepted that got into the country. Mr. Chairman, if we just continue to flip over to page 4, one of the problems that we see is this massive influx of illegal drugs coming into this country in 1 year. We intercepted 655,000 pounds of drugs, and here in Wyoming alone, in the year 2021, the latest year that data was available, law enforcement in the state of Wyoming has intercepted 17,324 grams of fentanyl. Fentanyl only takes 2 grams to kill most adults. That's the equivalent of killing 35,000 residents in the state of Wyoming in 1 year to potential drug overdoses for fentanyl. Mr. Chairman, we've also had a significant number of deaths that we know of that we're able to track, over 506 in the last year in 2022 that died on the southern border trying to get into this country. Mr. Chairman, this puts a significant burden on both our law enforcement and the people in the state of Wyoming and puts us in potential jeopardy. So, Mr. Chairman, what the bill contemplates doing is appropriating money. And so if we go to page 5 in section 2, it would appropriate $3 million out of legislative stabilization account to the governor's office to enter into a contract with the state of Texas for the partial or construction of a border wall. The state of Texas would remit a voucher back to the governor's office who would verify that the actual construction took place, and at that point in time, and it will allow the transmit of that money. So it's a reimbursable kind of expenditure. It also has a provision within the contract that shall provide that the state of Texas may use not more than $250,000 of the appropriation to transport non-citizens of the United States from Texas to sanctuary cities that want those folks in other states. Mr. Chairman, if you flip over to page 6, section 3, the same provision for the state of Arizona. Section 3 would appropriate $2 million with the same language with the contract required with the governor and for transport of illegal aliens out of those states. Mr. Chairman, page 7, section 4, there's appropriation of $250,000 to the state of Florida for the purposes of transporting illegal aliens to non-sanctuary or sanctuary states and other states. Mr. Chairman, if you turn over to page 8, and to get to the bottom, it just provides a provision in there. If these funds aren't expended within or contracts with these other states within 1 year, the governor would have the discretion to extend the amount of money or increase the amount of money for those states that wanted to participate with the state of Wyoming in this program. Mr. Chairman, I want to leave you with one thought. When you're faced with an overflowing bathtub, it doesn't make much sense to grab the mop. What you have to do is reach for the spigot. And we know where the spigot is in this case, Mr. Chairman. It's our southern border. So rather to put a continued burden on our state and local governments to try to mop this stuff up, why don't we just shut the spigot off at the border? So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Question, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question. We list the border states, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and then we go right on. We don't put anything aside for New Mexico, but we do for Florida, which is not a border state. I understand they have some illegal aliens there that they might need to transport, but can you tell me what we're thinking on that?
So, Mr. Chairman, what we were thinking of when this bill was drafted up was to actually target those areas where we have the largest number of illegal aliens, which on our southern border right now is Arizona and Texas. We have had in the past those states already engaged in these kind of programs and have something set up at one time already. And so the idea is to support existing programs that are already in place by those states.
Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Please.
Do you think New Mexico's not having a problem because their law enforcement is handling it differently than California or Texas or Arizona?
Mr. Chairman, I won't speak to the nature of what New Mexico's problem is, but currently, as I understand it, they don't have a program that they're worried about. We look at the numbers, they don't have maybe the extent of the problem. Certainly, that could be something that could be included in the bill. If we wanted to reach out to New Mexico and make those available to them, that would certainly be a friendly amendment, Senator Anderson.
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. A unique connection to fentanyl with the border. Has anyone from Wyoming law enforcement asked for this to be the allocation of resources concerning the fight against fentanyl to go to the border wall construction?
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think this contemplated that we're going to tie up Wyoming law enforcement. This is to reduce their workload by precluding it before it gets here.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you. I agree that we're intending to build a wall, and the purpose is to protect Wyoming law enforcement. And we cite in our legislative findings data from DCI associated with seizures of fentanyl in 2021, which likely occurred on our interstate systems, no doubt. So any data associated with the source of those interdictions that recovered that fentanyl? What states did they source out of?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, what we do know is that most of the actual components of the drugs for fentanyl that are transported across the border in the United States are manufactured in China. And the actual drug fentanyl is manufactured in Mexico by the cartels and shipped through various sources. So I don't know that we even have the technology to trace it all the back to where the trace elements or the trace components for fentanyl come from. What we do see is an entire range of the lethality of fentanyl within those drugs. And so again, I don't know exactly what question you're asking, but the point we're trying to get to here is we know we have massive amounts of fentanyl flooding into this country. We know where the components are manufactured at, and then we know where the final product is manufactured at, and we know the mechanism for the transportation into the United States and the state of Wyoming.
Follow up, Senator Nethercott.
No, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else to the committee? Senator Hicks, are we the committee of origin on this bill? We're the primary committee?
Mr. Chairman, you are the committee of origin on this.
Okay. And then with respect to the wall, I thought that the border states were trying to build a wall and there was an injunction in place, and it's a battle in court between the feds and the states. The feds asserting primacy and the states asserting you're not doing your job, so we're doing it for you. Is there any chance this money will actually be deployed given that lawsuit?
Mr. Chairman, I think you're correct where it dealt with federal property on federal lands. I am aware of the cases where they're using state money on private lands, that there is still some ongoing construction within the state of Texas, or was within recent time, within the last few months. So
Okay,
the
any
injunction
idea how much-
specifically dealt with federal lands and the federal border.
Any idea what proportion of the border is federal versus private?
Mr. Chairman, most of it in the state of Texas is private.
Okay.
The majority in Arizona is federal lands.
And then I'm curious about the aid going to the states. I've seen the stories, and I'm just speaking as a small town person and a former small town mayor. Those towns are just absolutely overwhelmed. Was there consideration instead for aid for those communities?
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't hear you. You'll have to speak into the microphone.
I said, speaking as a small town person and a former small town mayor, those towns are absolutely overwhelmed. They don't have the services to provide for those folks. Was there any consideration given assistance to the towns as opposed to the states?
Mr. Chairman, no, there was not, and I didn't look into the legality of whether that would take contracting with state funds for a municipal jurisdiction in another state.
Okay. Anything else from the committee? All right. Thank you, Senator Hicks. Do we have any agency comment?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, this
Welcome.
afternoon or morning, members of the committee. My name is Betsy Anderson. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and General Counsel for Governor Gordon. I am here and to let you know that the governor is in support of this bill. We have supported these communities, at least Texas and Arizona, in the past. For example, Operation Border Strike was something we participated in. It has been difficult to do all that we wanted to do in that we didn't have the authority and the funding. And so this legislation will be very helpful for us to continue to support these communities. To your question, Senator Anderson, I think one of the reasons why New Mexico is not on the list is that they have, based on their administration, they have not made requests, and that is not, of their current administration, that is not a priority for them in New Mexico. So that's one of the reasons why they're not on the list. That could change, and so certainly adding it if they were to have a need or have a request. You do have the flexibility in here. We do have the flexibility, and we appreciate that. That's very helpful, that if the funds are not expended by July 1st, that then the governor could use a different, for a different state.
Senator Guru.
Good afternoon. Question: how many other requests does the chief executive get from other states for funding for various problems, issues, things that come up? Just give me a ballpark.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, you caught me off guard. I'm off the top of my head. I mean, there's a lot of coordination amongst governors and the National Governors Association, the Western Governors Association, the Republican Governors Association. So there are various requests to coordinate and work together. It's typically done through those organizations, and our policy advisor for those areas could probably speak more specifically about those requests, but we do have requests to work together and coordinate.
Follow up?
Follow up, yes. I didn't see any requests like this in the governor's budget. Any particular reason for that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, I don't know why that wasn't one of the budgetary items. I don't know if he was aware of this bill coming, or if he had to be thoughtful about what you ask for and making sure that you don't ask for too much, so you get certainly what you need.
Follow on?
Yeah, I was just wondering, he penned 21 letters asking us for various things, for everything from AIS to many different funds, many different categories. Submitted an entire supplemental budget, and I didn't see this anywhere. I didn't see this last year in the budget, and so I was just asking. It was something that just surprised me. Okay, thank you.
Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question: where are the nearest sanctuary cities or states to Wyoming, approximation?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, I know there's some in California, but I don't know where those sanctuary cities are. I don't know if Senator Hicks says. But
I'm just concerned because we're going to be busing. We're going to be paying for the plane tickets, the bus tickets for all of these people to travel across the United States to other sanctuary cities or states. Could be Colorado. We're going to bus 800,000 migrants to Denver? Is that what we're going to do with the money? I'll be fighting for $22 million for a Laramie County school. And I'm being asked to appropriate over $5 million for bus tickets?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Senator Nethercott, certainly it would be by agreement with these various communities. One of the things that the governor was hoping to see would be a bit more flexibility. Right now, the funds are designated to help construct a wall and to transport non-citizens to sanctuary cities. The requests we have gotten are a lot are in line with just general support for border security. And to the chairman's point, one of the requests in the past has been that these small communities don't have the wherewithal with their law enforcement to do what they need to do for their own communities. And so part of those requests had been training for these local communities and help for them on a law enforcement perspective. There's been requests for equipment needs. And so one of our requests would be for if the committee would consider giving a bit more flexibility for the use of the funds so that they could hopefully match the needs of these communities when they ask, because it's not just a general, what can you do to help? It's these are the needs we have, and it would be nice if this matched up with what their needs are. And so that was some of the, when we tried to help these communities in the past, that was part of the issues we ran up against. And that's what I talk about, the authority to do that.
Follow up? No? Anyone else? Anyone else? Well, thank you, Betsy.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
if I may answer Senator Gru's request. The reason this didn't show up in the governor's budget, because he wasn't approached with this. This was a legislative-driven directive, and we already had the governor's budget in December. This bill didn't originate until January, so it was after a chance at what time the governor had actually profiled it or asked for it. So that's why it didn't, maybe not, didn't show up, but wasn't even on the governor's at that point in time's request, is because this bill did not get drafted until January after the governor had submitted his request to the JAC. So that opportunity was gone. So, Mr. Chairman, and just to follow up with if I may, with Senator Nethercott regarding the transportation will be through a contract with the governor. The governor will have more than ample opportunity to weigh in with where that transportation could and possibly take place. And as far as you're concerned for maybe busing them to Colorado, in fact, Colorado started busing them to Washington, D.C. last month through a Democratic administration. So that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But the point being is this will all be identified in the agreement through the governor's office and those other states.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
And I've got
Thank you, and I understand this is a difficult issue. Page 5, line 14. $250,000 of this appropriation to transport non-citizens of the United States from Texas to sanctuary cities and other states. We are transporting migrants that may or may not be criminals with no documentation and no paperwork throughout these United States on a political whim. Let's talk about law enforcement. How are they supposed to track these individuals who are now being bused from Colorado to Washington, D.C., to our urban cities from where they were originally at our border? And there is a crisis at our border, without a doubt. And I have great empathy for those communities who are struggling with a border that is uncontrolled, that is dangerous, and that this country needs to address.
Okay, I think we're getting into floor debate, and I'd like to give people an opportunity to comment. So Betsy's finished agency comment. Is there any other agency comment? Okay, any comment from the public? Please, welcome. We just need your name and title, rank, serial number, organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pull that close. You're very faint voiced.
My name is Tyler Sesser. I just come to you as a concerned citizen.
What about now? Is that better? Well,
Yeah,
that's
they're
nice.
much better, yeah.
My name is Tyler Sesser. I come to you as a concerned citizen and a citizen of Senator Anderson's district. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking comment on this bill. I know that came quite quickly for everyone to get to this point. I think I share concerns about the border. I think our failing kind of federal policy is of concern. We may have different reasons for arriving at why it's a failing policy, but I think that this bill only props it up and passes the buck down the road so that we're kind of saving the federal government for having to solve this problem themselves by spending our money on that. I'm concerned when I think about this is not really a Wyoming issue in general, when we know that we have the highest suicide rate in the nation and we just saw the defunding of the 988 trust. I would love to see this $5.3 million go towards protecting and saving Wyoming residents' lives who are struggling with suicidal ideation. I think about homeless youth population in Wyoming is also growing, and this $5.3 million would go to some organizations that can really change Wyoming residents that live here. That is real kind of a major concern. And then when we come to substance abuse or this fentanyl concern, which is a very serious issue for us, there's some phenomenal substance abuse recovery programs and prevention programs, or even our officers that could be intersecting with this, that we could be putting that 5.3 towards prevention and recovery within our state. And I would just implore you to consider those options instead of sending our money to other states that have much bigger budgets than ours. So thank you for the opportunity to share testimony.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Sesser? None? All right, thank you, sir. Thanks for coming down from Casper. Further public comment? Welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good morning, members of the committee. Good morning, Chairman Kinski and members of the committee. My name is Greg Hunter. I'm from Laramie, Wyoming. When I look at an issue, I try to determine whether the solution proposed addresses the problem and then try to work on a message that appeals to those making decisions. I've not always been successful at this endeavor. When I looked at this bill and the many other bills that have been brought by the legislature this session, they have been authored and supported by legislators that are proudly Christian in their beliefs. I see it expressed in their legislative biographies, and many of these legislators are participating along with the governor in a Wednesday morning Bible study that is focused on authentic Christianity, which is a study of Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount, as described in Matthew chapter 5. When I saw this bill, I immediately thought of the words of the Lord's Prayer. As soon as I think of the Lord's Prayer, I think of my high school football coach, when he led us in the Lord's Prayer before every game. That includes the line, "Forgive us our trespasses, just as we forgive those who trespass against us." And he quoted Vince Lombardi, and my coach continually said, "Actions speak louder than words." Now, Vince and Rusty, my coach, were Christians too, and they all were saying is a distillation of Matthew chapter 7 on how we can identify authentic Christians, as you will know them by their fruits or by the deeds that they do. I've studied the immigration issues, and much of our southern border problems are the results of 100 years of terrible policies that the U.S. has perpetrated on our neighbors to the south. This bill does nothing to change those issues, and those voting for this bill that have professed the belief in Christ should be ashamed of what they do. Your actions on this bill will speak louder than the words you put on your biography. I will stand for questions if you have any. I have plenty of solutions on the southern border. Would love to talk about it, as America has like one of the best histories on why we should change our policies. Prohibition caused the largest crime wave in American history, and our drug war is driving these immigration issues. This wall does nothing to solve that policy. Thank you very much. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Questions for Mr. Hunter? Questions? Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming over the mountain.
It was a little blustery today.
Yeah, it's generally.
Yeah, it's going to be fun on the way home, too. I'm trying to get this thing on.
Safe travels. Further For the comment from the public. The comment from the public. Welcome.
Gail Simmons, Sheridan County. I wasn't going to speak on this because, frankly, I didn't believe what I was reading when I saw this bill drop. I share with everyone, and I'm speaking as a private citizen, I think we've got a tremendous problem on our southern border. It is a federal problem. It is not solely a Wyoming problem, but all of us. So the first thing I want to point out that border security and immigration is the responsibility of the United States Congress. We take on a lot of things in this state, and I would like us to take on those things that occur within our four corners. The transport of legal migrants by the Florida governor is a subject of lawsuits for misuse of funds earmarked for coronavirus needs and fraud at a tune of $32,000 per individual. These individuals were here using our existing legal processes. These were not illegal aliens crossing the border, but people who are following our existing processes and were duped into getting moved to someplace else. The two incidents, sending migrants to the U.S. Capitol and a tourist town, were done without any advance coordination for housing or otherwise processing. So while we are overrun with migrants or immigrants or illegal aliens, I don't care what you use for it, while we are overrun in Texas, there are actually facilities there to take care of them. We dropped children off in freezing weather outside the Naval Observatory without any arrangements for shelter or appropriate clothing. This is not who we are as Wyoming people. This is not who we are as Americans. That's as un-American as it gets. There's a $25 million indictment that is coming to Steve Bannon for fundraising, for fraud, for the wall. Now, I have no doubt that if this money goes, it will actually be taken care of appropriately, because that's what we do. But throwing good money after bad is not a good use of our funds. So that's the question. How is this an appropriate use of Wyoming state funds, given critical state needs for suicide prevention, WyoLink, postpartum Medicaid coverage, capital construction, mental health problems, substance abuse, on and on and on? I believe in this state. I believe in conservative principles. This violates, in my mind, almost every conservative principle that I have learned and been taught. We can do better, and we should do better. And I stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Simmons? Questions? All right, thanks, Gail. Safe travels back.
Oh, not until March.
Okay. Well, safe travels in March. Further public comment? All right, closed comment. It's to the committee. I'll move the bill. Second. Been moved and second. Discussion. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where to begin? Well, let's start with the comment about the governor and what he knows and what he doesn't know. Governor's fairly knowledgeable fellow down here on the first floor. Matter of fact, I talked to him last year about he sent some National Guard folks and some equipment down to the border to help out. So I think I disagree with the knowledge that he didn't have any knowledge of this situation before this bill came up. I think he's known about it. I think he chose not to put this in the budget, and I think that he was right to do so. Second, while this is a problem, I agree with Ms. Simmons that it's a national problem. Now, some people may not like, and I don't say this only because you brought it up, the presenter of the bill brought it up. He brought up political parties. Well, sounds like he doesn't like the national party that has the policy that's in place right now. Well, run for president is what my advice would be. Next, let's talk about priorities. $15,022,556 to reduce the wait list for comprehensive waiver for citizens of this state to get health care. This committee voted it down. $6,329,072 to restoration, step 2 and step 3 cuts for reimbursement on the comprehensive waiver for developmentally disabled kids. This committee voted it down. When it came before us to vote money to sue the state of Washington because they were engaging in restraint of trade against this state, I was the first one to sign up and say, you bet. But this is ridiculous. It is, I frankly think it is offensive. And with all due respect, I think it is misguided at best. This state has problems. This state has issues. This state has things that we need to take care of. And it takes serious people and serious discussions to help solve these issues. This is not an issue for us. We've got plenty on our plate. I urge you with all dispatch to vote no on this. I know that there are a lot of folks on the floor who have disagreements with the administration. But I beg this committee, please let this cut pass. We do not need this on our floor. We need to talk about issues in this state. I urge you to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson. Senator Carew. Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar. And Chairman Kinski.
I'll move it, but then it goes to the primary sponsor.
Oh, okay.
We have property tax relief, Senator Case, and I don't see him.
You got the state shooting.
Yeah, let's move on to state shooting complex. Okay? Is this you again, Senator Hicks? Okay, who's going to present? Who from the House is going to present on the state shooting complex task force? Oh, Professor.
I've been down and personally looked at that at one point in time. We have other states that are contemplating this. So members of the committee, what this does is take that concept and then broaden it just a little better. And to develop a shooting education and shooting sports complex that would be a truly destination type resort for one of our communities within the state of Wyoming. And so what the bill does is set up an oversight task force to start to develop what that would look like. And so we've got the plans and initial estimates of the cost of the facility south of us, and we've also looked at some of the plans for a proposed facility to another state up to our northeast. And so we've looked at those and said, what can we do in Wyoming to attract this business to the state of Wyoming as a truly destination-type facility? And so this group would establish a task force to look at that, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to walk through what that was made of. So what the task force would be the governor or his designee, if we're on page 2, the director of the Game and Fish Department or his designee, director of the state parks, director of the Department of Tourism, 2 members representing firearms or archery manufacturers, companies within the state of Wyoming, 1 member of the public representing a shooting sports organization that has representation in Wyoming, 1 member of the public representing hunting and wildlife conservation, 1 member or 2 members of the House and 2 members of the Senate. So it's a 12-member advisory board. And the purpose of the board initially, in the conversations that we've had, would be to develop a request for proposals. Because what we anticipate is, rather than coming out and just designated a community, is to allow each one of our counties and our municipalities to work with private sector industries to put together a proposal that would best facilitate this and also allow them some ownership and participation in a state complex of this nature. Again, the idea here is to drive our tourism and our shooting sports and outdoor recreation within the state of Wyoming. Mr. Chairman, so their initial duty is going to be to start to develop that RFP that then would go out to every community in the state of Wyoming that wanted to submit a request for proposals back. Now, one of the unique natures of these type of facilities is they take a large amount of ground. So the facility that's down to the south of us, they literally have shooting ranges on topography. So think of out in the hills of up to 2,000 meters. So it's over a mile. So very large, complex, multi-purpose. Mr. Chairman, I know we're a little stretched for time here, so I'll try to speed this up and save some time for my co-sponsors and agency testimony. So that's the purpose of the task force. There is an appropriation to start setting aside some money to do this. It requires further legislative authorization. The task force would work, put the RFPs out, get those RFPs back, review those, make a recommendation back to the legislature, which will be a deliberative process that we'll look at those and then make a decision, and then the appropriations for those monies then would be start to develop the plans, the architecture, the design, the infrastructure, and work with those, whoever is the recipient of that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd turn it over to my co-sponsor if he has anything that he'd like to add to that.
So Art, Amy Vanderbilt says you're entitled to the highest honorific that you've ever attained. Is that professor or representative?
I'm happy with either.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just stand in support of this fine bill. I think it really reflects well on Wyoming to have a facility like this, to have a destination facility where the shooting sports, which are growing leaps and bounds, would have a destination in our state with a proud tradition of firearms, archery, black powder shooting, all these different facets of the shooting sports could have a state-of-the-art facility co-located at one facility in Wyoming. I think that would be marvelous. Whichever community ultimately gets this will have a opportunity to bring in a large number of shooters on a fairly frequent basis throughout the summer and perhaps all year round. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity to expand the shooting sports and will reflect well on all the work that we've done to encourage the firearms industry and manufacturing industry to come to Wyoming. So I stand in support.
Thank you. Questions for Representative Washington? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this is very exciting. Laramie County has a large shooting sports complex that we paid for within the county. The taxpayers voted to support it. Our commissioners supported it. We put it up. It is highly successful, utilized all the time. You actually have to make reservations to get in there. Super cool. Community loves it. And while I've been out there participating in shooting sports, I've had conversations with many people about how much better this would be if it was a little higher end, maybe. We could get some food, hang out for a while. And if this could be a privately funded project, right? If this is to scale, should this be privately funded? because other states, as you've identified, do have privately funded sporting clubs, facilities. So we're using public funds for this again. I'm excited about the idea. Curious to know where it would be located. So want to know more about why we wouldn't let the private sector do this, one. Two, the use of tourism funds. I know that fund and that department has gone through a lot of scrutiny. It's been hard to get funding for it historically, and so we're using $2.5 million from there. And then three, your thoughts on the location of where this complex could be.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me start with that and work backwards. The idea of this is that we didn't want to prejudice the opportunity for every community in the state to be able to submit a request for proposal. So that's one of the primary purposes, is to go out there and let our communities compete for this opportunity to participate in this program. So there is no predispose of where it would go. Obviously, folks that are already, you're going to have some place that, and the good senator, you've got an outstanding facility. It's a minor facility and compared to in the concept that we're talking about here. There are 2,000 meters, over a mile ranges that you have to be able to facilitate these type of events. So you take what the city has here and then you put it on steroids, and that becomes an international. One down to our south, they have international shooting competitions. You have to have, probably going to have an airport in close proximity to support this. Again, so that's, we don't know what the community is yet. Let's find out. Who can bring the best proposal back? We'll make a recommendation back to the Joint Appropriations Committee and the governor and also the TRW, and that'll be a recommendation that comes out of that task force. Now to the funding, again, we use a multitude of funds. Again, this is contemplated initially, but they'll have a significant level of state involvement. And it is going to be a state shooting complex. It's not going to be a municipal shooting complex. And what we've also contemplated would be a joint partnership. It may be a state, county, private corporation partnership. Given the nature of the cost of these things, we want to leverage our ability. We want to maximize the potential to bring in as many people from out of state as a destination type recreation facility as we can. I hope that answers your questions, Madam Chair, or Senator Nethercott.
Follow.
Will the international shooting competition be required to be next to an international airport? Representative Washit?
Only ones with towers.
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways to reach airports around Wyoming. But I would just say, again, the ingenuity of the community that ultimately wants this facility in terms of what they're able to leverage within local partnerships, municipal government, county government, that's all yet to be seen. And you may have somebody come in with a proposal saying, we have the land, that's our, invite, we'll produce this many acres for you. Who knows what this ultimately will look like at the end, but I think the potential is tremendous for our state.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I have been to that shooting range south of us, close to a mountain down there that the highway runs through. And I've seen their long range. We also have that in Casper. We have a 2-mile range that one of my friends shoots on a regular basis. But that isn't as big as the one in the south. But it was done by private enterprise, not by the state of Colorado or anyone else. And I like that approach, that they might do that or be in on ours for sure. Thank you.
Representative Washit, let me ask you, when this concept came to me, I immediately thought of the complex in Cheyenne. And it's the nicest I know of. How much bigger or different is what you contemplate than what they've got in Cheyenne, which is pretty darn nice?
Mr. Chairman, when you look around America, you'll find individual ranges. For example, a long range, 2-mile range, state-of-the-art, beautiful. You'll find places in the state to our north that hosts outstanding archery competitions and have a state-of-the-art archery facility. What we're envisioning is all of that coming together, where you have a world-class archery area, a world-class black powder area, a world-class handgun, multi-gun, so that we would look at the best examples in all of these domains throughout the country and try to assemble something comparable for each of those, all co-located in a single facility in Wyoming. Would be on the top of the map.
Senator Salazar's next, but I do have a question. We're only looking at the appropriation, right?
No, Mr. Chairman, you were assigned, because of the appropriations, as the Committee of Origin.
Okay. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I just want to be, I want to feel comfortable that, ideally, not ideally, you would immediately think of someplace like Jackson or Casper. Cheyenne has its. I just want you to reassure me that rural Wyoming, such as Du Bois, that has an incredible museum, that area is not going to be precluded from having the opportunity to have a chance at something like this, because instantly some people may just think of Casper or Jackson, and you fellows are the ones that are putting this together. What is your concept of that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I think with the large group that we have for this advisory board, who knows where it's going to go? This is not something that's predetermined, and I certainly don't have a preference where it goes in Wyoming. I want Wyoming to have this range. Frankly, the range that I shoot at in Casper, I don't think there's space for anything like this where I shoot. So I don't think that any place in Wyoming is excluded. And I think it really comes down to the desire of that local community to host this place and what kind of partnerships they're able to strike with their local community and landowners and so forth. It could go anywhere. And so, yes, you have my assurance it's not predetermined that it's going to go to a large urban area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to say welcome to the tourism cause. Like I say, I think this is the kind of pursuit I'd expect from the senator, and I appreciate it. I wanted to know that.
Mr. Chairman, tourism is one of our biggest economic engines in my community, but they all have guns.
Perfect.
It's hunting season.
So, a couple of questions, though. First on the page 1, line 10, Director of the Department of Tourism or his designee. Diane, I think we're going to need some darker lipstick, okay? It's a she.
What?
Darker lipstick. It says his designee. I don't think that's his. So we might want to change that. It also says on page, let's see, on page 4, line 16, no later than October 1st of each year, the task force shall report to the governor, Joint Appropriations Committee, and the Joint Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources Interim Committee of the activities of the task force. My question is each year, so I think that this is contemplated to take a while. So then my question then relates back to the funding. Do we need to predetermine? There's a bit of money in here, and I don't have a problem with that, but if this is going to be a multi-year task force, do we need all the money up? Do we need this amount of money up front, or how do those two jive together? I guess would be my question.
Do you understand that?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, ideally the work of the task force would primarily be done by the end of the year, but we can't presuppose that everything's going to happen. So we've left that open. If you look, there's a revision that all the funds come back after. It's really for 2 years. By the time you get to 2026, if we haven't got something spelled out and funded at that point in time, it's probably not going to happen. So the revisions come back in 2026, but it at least contemplates that if it goes longer than 1 year, that there's available funding to do that. My hope would be that we would have a recommendation back on a facility, on a location, by the time we're back in session, so we can finalize where that may go. And quite frankly, I anticipate that there'll be some debate within the legislature. That task force will make a recommendation, but at that point in time, everybody's application is available for public information, and we'll make that decision collectively. It's like all things, Mr. Chairman, we need to start saving now for construction a year or two out. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Follow on?
It does. It does. Thank you very much. I'm looking on page 5, there's 40,000 appropriated for putting the commission together, another 45,000 for LSO, 5 million from ARPA dollars, 2.5 million from the tourism account, special projects reserve account, $625,000, which we're amending to 2.5 million from Pittman Robertson dollars. So we got 2, 5, 10 plus million, right? To
Mr.
get this
Chairman,
ball rolling.
It's 10 million, and you have an amendment we'll get to when you work the bill that was brought to us that because of the potential federal funding that the Game and Fish Department could potentially utilize for this, we need to structure that amendment so that could happen. So when you work
Could you pull the mic a little bit closer, please?
So, Mr. Chairman, when you get ready to work the bill, there is a proposed amendment that's been handed out on the department funding.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, anything else from the committee? Anything else from the sponsors?
Mr. Chairman, no, go ahead.
Oh, please, Senator Nethercutt.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. A couple of things I'm going to need help with, which is the obvious. One is, for the last couple years, there's been a strong effort to reduce the amount of task forces we have. We have too many. And then creating accounts. And so this bill does all of that. Is it okay now? I mean, so I'm just trying to, I'm struggling through that for the precedent here of holding that line of not creating more task forces and not creating more accounts. Because we're now creating another financial account where we're putting all this money in for this purpose, and I get it. But we're spending most of our time trying to eliminate most of those accounts. So just some comments back.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I've always concurred that there's a fundamental difference in what a task force does, and they should be used appropriately. This is not a study task force. This is a task force similar to what we did with the Casper Offers building, is to put together a group of people that starts with a concrete idea, builds something out of it, and then turns it back over. It's not just to study something. Too many times task forces are formed to do what the standing committees or the select committees can already do. It's just to study. This task force is to create.
Okay, follow on. All right, thank you both very much. We'll open it up for agency comment. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brian Nesvik with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. So I'll be very brief.
Brian, could you avoid any comments like you're going to shoot from the hip or anything like that?
I will do that. Thank you for the advice there, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. So, first I'll just say that I think that it's important to note that the approach that's outlined in this bill that I think is very thoughtful. It's something that aligns with what the department feels like we could be a participant of and would be glad to be a participant of. The concept of a shooting complex like this that has the state of Wyoming, pasted right on the front of it, I think is something that we've heard from our constituents that has support. We have a strategic plan that we follow with priorities that are nested within that plan, and that is largely informed by public comment and comment from our constituents. this is certainly the type of activity, both opportunities for shooting sports as well as, we envision there's at least some room for discussion here on using this venue for wildlife education, for firearms safety type of instruction, and other opportunities that are directly aligned with the department's mission, and also, more importantly, with what we've heard from our constituents. So I think the bringer of the bill has, been very thoughtful in the way he's put this together, and he's already identified an idea that we brought to him that would be important for us, I think, to be changed in the bill. It sounds like you've got that amendment. And then the last thing I would say is I think our commission, we've already even had some preliminary discussions with individual members of the commission, not in front of a commission meeting at this point, but I do believe our commission would be supportive of this type of an idea and would be very eager to be engaged in it. And with that, I would stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, questions for Mr. Nesbitt? All right, looks like, Senator Anderson.
Nesbitt, what would you envision? Would you envision this being full-time employees running this facility, or would it require a lot of volunteers? A lot of times when you're relying on volunteers, you've got to have a base, a group of volunteers that you don't wear out your volunteers. But if it's all paid employees, I guess you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, for the scale that has been contemplated to this point, I believe it's definitely something that's run by a full-time staff. The details of that are something I think that this task force, this group of individuals would be charged with trying to develop.
Well, yes, Mr. Chairman. In that case, it's been our habit to put facilities like this in places that don't have enough people to employ, to do the employment. So good luck with that.
Not surprising from the senator from the center part of the state.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both very much. Further agency comment? Further agency comment? Mr. Westby, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Just since we're in the bill, I thought I'd come up and offer any opportunity for any questions you might have for us. As the Office of Outdoor Recreation is in our agency, this type of a product would fit really well with what that office is doing and what our agency is doing from a mission perspective, in partnership, obviously, with the other agencies that we're involved with. So I'd stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Westby? Looks like you're getting enough light. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further agency comment? Welcome, Diane. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Diane Schober, not his designee, which I find quite humorous. It's the deep voice, probably. But Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, again, much like Director Westby just said, I wanted to be available if you had questions of us. We're always pleased to see an expanded view of tourism and how it integrates into community development and enriches the lives of our communities. And we have continually been partners with the Office of Outdoor Recreation, State Parks, Cultural Resources, Game and Fish, among many other agencies, and would continue to do so should this actually come to fruition. And I would stand for any questions should you have them.
Super. Questions? You're okay with the appropriation out of the Travel and Tourism Fund?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, in theory, yes. I think that you all as appropriators will just have to be cautious about the available balance that's in that fund as you appropriate through the different projects that are coming up through this session.
All right, well, you need to know there's at least two people up here that are jealous anytime there's an appropriation out of there to make sure that it's not being rated for something that can't pass the straight face test for tourism.
And we appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, further agency comment? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Kevin Hibbard, State Budget Director, and with me today is Christine Eminger. She's everything ARPA. I think you've all had the opportunity to meet Christine. You saw her in the Joint Appropriations Committee, and certainly when we were setting up the portal, she worked with us on that.
Christine, what's your title?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kinski, my title is Senior Budget Analyst.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one of my previous bosses had a saying, "I hate to be the ant at the picnic." So today, I just want to put on record that we do not believe that the $5 million that you have in here designated for ARPA Direct will qualify for ARPA Direct funding. If it's a police scenario, yes, but for the public, we don't see how we could get that qualified.
Well, and I'm concerned about the timeliness. What's the deadline by which it has to be expended? I don't know if this is going to be.
Mr. Chairman, we have to have obligations by the end of 2024 and expended by 27.
Okay, well, this probably could. And so.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
We have to have that expended by the December 2026.
Thank you.
12/31/2026. And
so there's a minute there at midnight between December 26th and January 27th.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
No.
So tell me, Mr. Hibbard, we qualified an awful lot of outdoor recreation stuff under with the idea that that was an industry that was severely impacted by the COVID. Why can't we shoehorn this in there?
Mr. Chairman, that's true. There's caveats that are available for tourism, for example. When you associate with the state parks and a tourism effort, that you could go through a different process, a different way of transacting the dollars, but just simply having this a direct appropriation from ARPA Direct funding does not qualify. Are there other mechanisms out there that perhaps we could consider? I think there might be. But the way the bill is written currently for an appropriation of ARPA Direct does not qualify.
Go ahead, Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hibbard, would there be a way that we could craft an amendment onto that ARPA sentence here that's in the bill that could maybe expand it enough so we could explore those opportunities?
Mr. Chairman, I believe so. And thinking about this, I would like to take you back to the Wyoming Home Services. This is where we wanted to provide ARPA Direct money for families to stay in their homes. And in that action, the legislature did appropriate $2.7 million, but they backstopped it with general funds. When we reviewed it, because the demographics didn't change, the number of people that were being served, it did not qualify for ARPA Direct, but the legislature had it backstopped with general funds so the Department of Health could continue that valuable program. So that's one area. Also, right now, we have a wide net cast across all government, and we've testified that in front of the Joint Appropriations Committee to see if there's other ways to use ARPA permissible money. Remember, there's ARPA revenue replacement, that's gone. There's ARPA Direct that you have to use every feature of qualification for ARPA dollars. And then there's ARPA permissible. For example, when we cross bienniums into 25, 26 eventually, we could then take another look at the health lab because that would be ARPA permissible. So if we could find a way to make something ARPA permissible, then what we could do is leverage that, meaning that these monies are spent on that ARPA permissible project where other funds could come into play for the difference.
Is that what you referred to as there's other mechanisms by which ARPA money could qualify?
Yes.
Okay.
And not, I can go into detail, but
That's all right. Go ahead, Senator Grew, and then Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you think you could conjure up some of that language for us by the time this hits the floor?
Mr. Chairman, we can do that. And also right now, because this and other items, we are continuing to work on that net of trying to find those ARPA permissible areas. And we will see what we can do to fast track this particular activity through the process that we have.
Okay.
Senator Nethercott. Okay, thank you. We look forward to the sponsors look forward to getting the amendment from you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further agency comment? All right, comment from the public.
Good afternoon. I get a twofer. My name is Greg Hunter from Laramie, Wyoming. I just wanted to say that I have looked at both public and private shooting ranges for the last 35 years. And I just want to impart on you that I don't know who you're going to pick on this committee, but you may want to start looking at some of the environmental and health and safety of the personnel that might be running this range. When, Forest Service or land management agencies contemplate these particular actions, they know right away that they're creating a circle of liability because of the lead that is being generated. A lot of people assume that all the lead and the highest pollution rates are downrange, when in fact the highest pollution rates are actually associated in the first 10 feet of the blast zone, especially in shotgun ranges. So
People are that bad a shot, huh?
well, it's the lead arsenate. It's actually the fine particles. So you don't want to breathe lead. We took it out of gasoline for a reason. World got better. But I just wanted to impart upon you, when you consider this particular committee, you may want to look at that particular issue. I've also looked at ranges that have been funded in other states. Some of the ammunition tax that gets generated can be recaptured by the state. So you might want to, pick out a person that understands that particular revenue capture, so that we might end up with a more holistic product if you go out for the scope of work, that what the community is actually getting themselves into. The other thing is, they talked about, Senator Anderson, Chairman Kinski, talked about volunteers to clean up the range and things like that. A lot of people really, I'll just say this, you should not have Boy Scout troops, young people going out and picking up brass. You should not have your personnel, if it's a dusty range, running over it with lots of dust generating activities, as you will end up with a blood level lead exposure. So I think there's a lot of considerations that you might want to consider when the bringers of the bill construct this. And I don't know who all the professionals are in this committee, but just based on my experience, that's what I see, is that, everybody likes the shiny object, but the operational costs and the other things need to be considered, and the community should be aware of that as well. I am too poor to bore in those ranges. I just go out 9th Street Road, hit BLM land, and the world is my oyster. I'll stand for any more questions, and thank you very much.
Anything from Mr. Hunter? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Further comments from the public? All right, I'll close comment. It's to the committee. Oh, is there anything online, Linda? I'm sorry. My apologies.
There's no one waiting for a public.
Okay. Thank you. I'll close public comment. It's to the committee. Do we have a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Nethercott.
if I may, the ARPA funding was a question for me, as well as whether or not that was proper or not. I just would like it to be known that I had two thoughts about that. One is to either fund at that level in future years when we have a better idea, or, not surprisingly, I'm willing to invest in the future of Wyoming on this and use other dollars if appropriate, because I do see a return on investment here and see this as an appropriate use of state dollars if it's viable and it works. So those 2 points.
Thank you.
Mr.
Senator Guru.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. This is, I think when, I'll go back and reach into the Wayback Machine, the Endow report, CARES came out and talked about outdoor recreation, this is exactly the type of thing that we're looking for. To have a world-class facility like this somewhere in the state of Wyoming, and don't be surprised if Jackson turns in an application. Wouldn't be surprised.
Mr. Chairman, we need to move that amendment.
Oh, yeah, well,
Well,
try.
is that amendment, do you want to carry that amendment on the committee of the whole? I mean,
Well, we can,
Yeah.
yeah, because time's running out.
I move the amendment.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion? Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Back on the bill. Further discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Call the roll, I'll stop. I'll stop saying nice things.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar.
Aye.
And Chairman Kinsky.
Aye. Committee, before we break, I need to know what you look like at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Terrible. Until I make myself up in the shower, I just over the day.
Puffy,
I'll be here.
you're available? Yeah. Okay.
What are we doing? Oh, the re-refer? Well, no, we have another bill.
Linda?
Oh, man.
So, yeah, I told Kale that we would carry over